Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Kirklees Local Television's weekly wind-up. This week my guest is Kavi Karnapur, who is part of the Hare Krishna movement. The topic under discussion for this week's show are Marsden's 23rd Cuckoo Weekend and the Hare Krishna movement. The International Society of Krishna Consciousness, otherwise known as the Hare Krishna movement, includes 500 major centres, temples and rural communities, nearly 100 affiliated vegetarian restaurants, thousands of namahatas or local meeting groups, a wide variety of community projects and millions of congressional members worldwide. Welcome to the programme, Kavi.
Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to ask you, if you were to describe the Hare Krishna movement to somebody that had never heard anything about it before, how would you go about describing it?
Well, it's a fundamentalist movement. It's generally known as Sanatan Dharma. That means an eternal occupation. You have an occupation as a newscaster, or other people have an occupation as a car salesman or a lumberjack. But these are not eternal occupation. Eternal occupation is something that you would do life after life after life. And in this case, Sanatan Dharma, it means eternal service to God. So in this case, Sanatan Dharma actually applies not only to the Hare Krishna movement, but to all different types of religion, because it's ultimately a connection, and developing a connection with the Supreme Creator.
Who are the people that helped to found the Hare Krishna movement? I understand it was in the 60s, I believe, that the movement was formed.
Yeah, the 60s were a very kind of like volatile time. There was a lot going off then, so people were looking for an alternative to regular life. So, what happened was there was an Indian Swami who was given an instruction by his guru. He left India on a boat. It took him 2 weeks. He had 2 heart attacks. Got to America, arrived in Boston, and then traveled up to New York with like nothing. He just had like a box of books and an umbrella. And then he started to preach to the Bowery. These were like the dirtiest kind of hippies, in those times, and he was able to change the hearts, of a few people, and then they got organized, and then they opened him a center in San Francisco, and then it started to spread. It spread, and like more and more people got involved. And he had a few principal disciples who he gave sannyas, or the order of renunciation, and these guys went all over the world. They spread the movement in about 12 years. It was an international society.
And then what are some of the core beliefs of followers of Hare Krishna?
Well, you can be a friend, you just hang around, go sit at the temple, listen to what they speak about. If you want to get more involved, then there is initiation, where you actually you're ordained by Guru, Once you take initiation, then you follow 4 regulative principles. It's no eating meat, that, includes, fish or eggs or those kind of things. We're lacto-vegetarian, we don't, pizza's okay, milk, products is fine. No eating meat, no intoxication. That means no cigarettes or coffee, anything with any kind of stimulant in it. No illicit sex. That means, some of us take lifetime celibacy, as a rule, and it cuts down on a lot of distraction. It gives you focus, and also no gambling, and that also includes speculation. Speculation is you don't know for sure, so it's best always to go from the books. We have, books that are given. Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita is the main textbook, so we try and read this every day as a rule, and also the chanting of 16 rounds. It takes about 2 hours. It's a meditation that we do every day on beads. This is a bead bag, and inside we have like a Christian rosary. And on each bead we would chant the Hare Krishna mantra. The mantra is 32 syllables. The Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we do maybe it's 16 rounds on the actual rosary, and it takes about maybe 2 hours. A meditation on the name of God. And it works. It worked for me.
Yeah. The movement, I understand, has its roots in India. In what way would you say that it differs from Hinduism?
Well, if you look at like Hinduism, what kind of picture does that paint inside your mind? You think of elephant gods and monkey gods and very colourful kind of culture and so forth. And in one sense, we follow the same culture. It's the same. We have the same version, of maybe you might say angels or demigods and so forth. But we point to Krishna as the supreme god. Krishna is bluish. He plays a flute, and he is known as the supreme enjoyer. He's the only one of the pantheon that does not have a weapon of war in his hands. All of the others, Durga, for example, she has many upraised arms with shield and saber and trident and so forth. But Krishna, he plays a flute because he's always enjoying. So that kind of points out that he would be, the supreme, because he has nothing else to do.
How does yoga play a part in the Hare Krishna movement?
Well, yoga is it's a way of life. Yoga is mostly people, they would think it's something that fat people in America, they would do to kind of stretch themselves out and so forth. And it's very beneficial because it goes way back. It's this ancient knowledge that's comes through, and the stretches in yoga that actually work the internal organs and so forth, like the kidneys and so forth. And it's not only just for the bones and muscles and so forth, but it's completely it's a complete system that works for even eyesight can be improved with yoga and so forth. Very advanced, and there's yoga masters out there, and they can perfect, they can live longer and they can run faster, and but that's not the point. You see, with just yoga for the body, you're not going to know the truth of this world. You're not going to break the illusion, of thinking, you're a human, you're from Huddersfield, you're a man, you're a newscaster. These are all enforced misconceptions that we have. Yoga should actually get rid of those. It should actually free us from this misconception of materialism. Now, there's different types of yoga. How are you going to get the truth? Yoga ultimately means to connect, it means connection. Now, you want to connect to the truth, ultimately, the absolute truth, beyond our relative viewpoints. Now, you can do that by jnana yoga. Jnana yoga is philosophical speculation. You're trying to fix your intelligence on the absolutes. You're trying to do it by your own speed. Who am I? Where am I from? What am I doing here? What's the best way to act? And there was many people who've tried to do this. The Greeks were great philosophical speculators. Socrates would go out into the street and ask, what is justice? And many people give him thousands of different answers, but he always found a way to turn it back on them, which is the fallacy of relative truth. Absolute truth, it's not about philosophical speculation, not about our own ascending path, but real knowledge is by revelation. I mean, theoretical knowledge, I am not this body, I am eternal. But to actually have that realized is something that is actually given by the Supreme Creator, the absolute truth, the source of everything. The same God that the Christians or the Muslims pray to, it's the same God for one. But yoga is, or bhakti yoga is what we practice in the Hare Krishna movement, is yoga of devotion. You treat everything and everyone with the respect that you would give God, and you try and develop a relationship of pure love with the Supreme Creator, and extend that to his parts and parcels, which is everyone around you. That would be the goal of Bhakti Yoga, which is a lot more than just kind of stretches for Americans.
Absolutely, yeah. How do you feel being part of the movement has benefited yourself personally?
Well, I actually, I'm from Huddersfield originally, and I was, my mum, she got divorced and then she got wings, and then she went to Cairo, Egypt, and I was always travelling after that. She kind of broke my nationalism of England. England, very strong nationalistic, English. So I got out of England, and we went to Cairo for 4 years, and and it was a good part of my life. I learned, about a different type of walk of life, new experiences, living in a different culture. I left that because, it was expat life, so it was fast life and a lot of rich friends, BMWs, and, under-the-counter prescription drugs. And it all went horribly wrong, and I was actually charged with Satanism and asked to leave by the secret police. And I had to go back to England, and I really needed to straighten my life out. So my brother, who was a Buddhist, got me into a Buddhist monastery, and I became a Buddhist monk for maybe 8 months, you know. And I was initiated by Lama Yeshe Lopal Rinpoche, who's Tibetan culture. And I lived in that community for 8 months as a Buddhist monk, and you know, did my duties. I was a cook, and I you know, helped out. Moved on from there because I couldn't handle the philosophy of nihilism. Just everything is nothing. You are nothing. I am nothing. Everything is nothing. You know. So I wandered away from that because I was quite attached to being who I was. So I ran away. I visited my mum in Thailand, and then I went back to England, and then ended up in Amsterdam. You know, trying to enjoy myself, and failing miserably, and ending up in the streets, addicted to drugs, and you know, that's when I really needed something to happen. It's like when you hit your lowest, you know, that's when it's going to happen. And I got my calling, I suppose. Once a year in Amsterdam, they have a festival called the Rath Yatra. It's a Jagannath festival. It's from Orisha in India, and they get these huge carts, like these huge wheels. And they put these 3 forms of God on the cart: Jagannath, Subhadra, and Baladev, you know, God, his brother, and his sister. And then the devotees, the worshippers, they would pull this through the street with ropes, you know, thousands of people, and they'd pull it. And I saw this, and it was at Dam Square, and I saw them, and they were giving away free food and so forth, and I approached them, and I said, can you give me something to eat, please? I haven't eaten for a while, and, you know, and they said, sure, take this, you know, and I said, I used to be a Buddhist, you know, and I really liked the monastic lifestyle, and they said, okay, come back to the temple. And then that was the decision. That was the only, on my part, that was the only thing that I could do. Is I had the intelligence to say, okay, let me give it another try. And then it took me after that, and it just been like a wave. It's momentum, and you just travel. Because it's an international society, so you just go and go and go from place to place to place. And, you know, experience, you know, the world, and I never looked back. You know, I just kept going. And you know, I don't want to say like I'm a better person or that I'm better than other people. I just got a break, you know, I just got lucky, you know. But I have changed, you know. I did change from what I was to what I am now. I definitely try and put people first. I think that's the most important thing. Yeah. You know, just to really look out for other people and not to put yourself always in the center. You know, the egotistic mentality. It's just, you know, I mean, you know, that's just, it's a horror, you know.
It sounds like you've had some quite momentous events throughout your life. Like how do you relate the person that you are now to maybe the person that you have been in the past, or is that not something that?
Well, what I did is I didn't just leave it, you know. I just didn't think, well, you know, to hell with them, and like kind of make my exit, you know. Is that I actually went back into it, you know, but with like my bubble of safety, you know. God will protect, you know, and I have seen it for myself, you know, in very kind of sticky situations, and nothing happened. You know, I went back into it in the sense as there's a Food for Life program in Amsterdam that I used to do, and they have these big like ice cream bikes that they have in Amsterdam, and we go out and I'd load up because I'd cook like khichdi, which is like rice and dal, and you mix it all in with vegetables and spices and ginger, especially for the winter. Ginger's the best thing, you know, because it cleans out the lungs and it kind of like gives you some heat in the body. And it's not like a spicy that's kind of, you know, burns the mouth, you know. So they really appreciate that. Going back out in the winter, feeding out the homeless for about 3 years, you know. So I got to see it from another side, you know, my activities, but from a, you know, a more pure perspective. And it was horrifying, really. Like, the things, the degradation that these people would sink to. You know, anyway, it's just like gutter life and so forth. But I never got involved, you know. During those 3 years, I kept it just on a very, I don't know, I made friends and I was speaking to people, oh, you know, and people would disappear and oh, what happened? Oh, he died of pneumonia. And it just, day after day after day, just very kind of like, very intense kind of lifestyle. And the devotees at the temple are saying, this is mentally scarring. You don't have to be doing this, you know, every day, you know. But I had this responsibility to go out and to try and put that in. So I put in my time trying to change that mentality, and I realized that I couldn't. You can't give people advice. Well, you can, but it has to be something that, you know, when was the last time that you slept? You know, or, you know, do you want to try and get into the shelter tonight? Or something relevant. But you can't tell them about God or those kind of things, unless they ask you, and you've got an opening. But you know, so, I tried to make my way into that kind of mentality that I had, to try and pay back a little bit, So that was kind of how I related to who I was, I did my bit, but then I realized I had to move on. There's other services. I started preaching in schools and kind of mellowed out, from such kind of like, I have to feed the homeless and change people and so forth. And then you realize after some time is that it's given. You can't go out and change people. There is a higher power that changes people's hearts. All you do is you act like a postman. You give the book or you say the words, but it's not really you that's really changing things. It's for somebody to actually have a religious experience, God is directly involved, and you just have to be kind of around to let Him do His business, And I think I was moved on from those particular services into kind of bluer skies, I suppose, where I didn't have to be involved in with such extreme circumstances,
Yeah. Now, I think probably the most recognisable thing for most people about the Krishna movement is the robes.
Okay.
Why orange? Why orange robes?
Well, yeah, it's kind of it's like a traffic cone. It's very kind of llamativo. It's very attracts the mind. But in India, it's actually the colour of renunciation. Different colours have different symbolic meanings, but orange is the colour of renunciation. If somebody's wearing white, for example, that means that they are married. Or if it's a woman, she's wearing white, it means that she's renounced. She's taken to become a widow, They wouldn't wear fancy colours to attract the minds of men. They would wear a very plain thing and they would shave their heads. But orange is a colour of renunciation. It may come from when the monks used to live in the forest and wash their clothes in the river, and there was a certain colour that was at the mud, and it would stain their clothes to a certain brown or orange type colour. Maybe that's where it came from. But it's a uniform at the end of the day. It's like, some people, I go out walking and people say, why are you wearing them clothes? I say, but, it's a uniform, you could see it. These policemen wear these bright yellow kind of things, and you could ask them the same question, It's just for people to identify who I am.
Yeah. My understanding is there's reincarnation is part of the belief of the Krishna movement. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's happened already. How old are you, for example?
28.
28, so it's happened for you 4 times.
Right.
Because scientific fact is that the body changes every 7 years. So if that's so, then there's not one cell that was there in the baby that's now in you. So physically you're a different person, but you're still the same person, aren't you? You've got the same memories, same attractions, you like the same thing, you have the same food that you like to eat and so forth. So there is part of you that retained who you are, and it's not physical, it's spiritual.
Yeah.
So taking that same principle to the end of your life, is that when it ends, then that same part of you that kept your personality during this time will pass on to another body, as it's already changed in this body. There's a text actually in Gita. I'll give you the Sanskrit. Dehinos minitadehe kavram yavram jara tatare hantara praptya dirastatra namuhyate. Now, that translates to, as the embodied soul passes within this body from boyhood to youth to old age, it will similarly pass to another body at the point of death. That's reincarnation, that's how it goes. It's a cycle. As we change in this body, we've already boyhood, youth, different bodies, old age, another body, then we will change from that old body back to the youth, or back to the baby body again, and we'll go through it again. Life after life after life. And the goal is not reincarnation. It's just to keep coming back again and again and again. Because it all ties into karma. Karma is action. It just means action. And you do pious activities, you'll get born amongst the Hollywood celebrities, and you'll be like Van Damme with your own swimming pool and a bar in it, and get your picture in a magazine. I'm okay, and but again, you'll die at the end of it. You won't know the truth. You'll think that you're a Hollywood celebrity and you'll die. Or you may be born amongst the devatas, the demigods, and you may have been put in charge of the motions of water or the movements of the face, and you may be working backstage, setting up all of the, karmic reactions for the people on earth. But again, you'll identify with a demigod body. I am this powerful demigod and I control these people, and but you won't know the truth of who you actually are. You won't know the eternal self. because Devatas, the angels, have a lifespan as well. It's millions of years, but it's, you know, very small in the eyes of eternity. So, or you could be born amongst the animals, or you could go to hell and you could be tortured for thousands of years if you're an evil person, if you're like a, I wouldn't, necessarily, I mean, it's somebody who doesn't do the duty. That's what we definitely, like a corrupt policeman or something, that would be somebody who goes to hell. But again, don't know the truth in hell either. You're tortured until your mind is reformed, you're ready for earth again, you get another chance. And the way to break the chain of reactions is to act where your action has no reaction. One who knows action in action, and inaction in action. He is somebody who actually knows. It's totally confusing. What actually breaks down to is you can't just sit there and do nothing, because there will be, I don't know, worms being digested in your gastric acid, or you'll be breathing in entities, or even if you boil water, you're killing something. There's always sin in this world, no matter what you do. To avoid that, you have to act in pure God consciousness, That's devotional service, back to yoga. That is a way to act where all of your reactions, Gyanagni Sarva Karmani, all reactions, both good and bad, are burnt to ash, so that you're free to go at the end of it. You don't have to be forced to come back to be punished or rewarded, because happiness is ultimately a reward that you're forced into. Most people are running for happiness thinking, but it's something actually forced into, according to the laws of karma. You can break that, you can know the truth about eternity, but you have to give up fruitive activity. You have to give up wanting the reward or avoiding the punishment. You just have to have an equal view of both. Do your duty in life and you're free.
Well, I know I've found this an extremely insightful and interesting discussion. If somebody out there was looking to get more involved with the movement or find out more about the movement, where would you direct them to maybe?
Well, they can go online, they can look up Hare Krishna temples, and they will have a, there's many different temples here in England. There's one in Manchester, there's another one in Newcastle, those are probably the closest, another one in Scotland. But yeah, if you want to get if you want to go for a Sunday program and check things out, you could go to one of the local temples. But if you want to get like training, you want to get like fixed up and like move into a temple and put on the robes and try like a different lifestyle, a different culture, then there are like temples like down south. There was one that George Harrison bought the movement in the 70s. Bhaktivedanta Manor in Hertfordshire, a big temple. They have like 60,000 people for festivals. So that would be a good place to kind of get trained up and to know the basics. Or you could go to India. India is perfect. There's big temples out there, and they're very kind of West friendly as well. A lot of Indian temples with real Indian kind of things. It's too much for Westerners. They won't be able to handle like the austerities and the 8 hours of meditation every day and so forth. It's very austere. But the Krishna Balaram temple in near Delhi, in Vrindavan, that has 24-hour kirtans where people just sing, play music. It's a very kind of family kind of feel to it, and it's very easy to be a monk in those kind of places. It's not very austere. And it's not overly loose either, There are some rules, but it's for our own good. But yeah, India or London, there's a few good temples there.
That's great. Thank you very much, Kavi, for your time.
Yeah.
After the break, we're going to take a look at Marsden Cuckoo Festival, the election result, and a wind-up of some local news.
However large or small your business, attracting new customers requires dedication and a lot of patience. Just like fishing, but you also need the right gear. Rods,
reels, lines, hooks, sinkers, lures, tackle box, tackle bag, net, bait, gas gloves, clothes, and pocket knife roach.
Or you could simply advertise with KLTV. Online, grow your business and your clientele. KLTV, your vision made reality. Should have gone to KLTV.
And welcome back. On the 22nd of April, Marsden Village held its 23rd annual Cuckoo Festival. Hundreds of locals and visitors descended on the village to celebrate. Many activities were available for the crowds, as well as live entertainment, including the Frumpton Guggen Band, the Mucky Pups Ukulele Band, and the Klezmer East Wing Occidentals, plus many more. The most repeated story of the festival goes that in the days of Marsden's beginnings, the good people of Marsden, who relied on the coming of spring for the growing of crops, recognised that with spring came the cuckoo. This led to the deduction that the cuckoo was the bringer of spring, and should it be caught and kept in the area, so spring would stay with it. Several people therefore decided to capture the cuckoo by building a wall around the bird. Such activity inevitably startled the bird, which took flight, skimming the uppermost course of the wall. This led to the now legendary final line of the tale, "Ah, but the wall were nobbut one course too short." The return of the cuckoo to Marsden is celebrated with workshops such as artistic banner making, Morris dancing and maypole dancing, arts and crafts, and many stalls from local producers, followed by the cuckoo parade itself. The celebrations are rounded off with the much anticipated, in Marsden at least, annual duck race. Now on to some local news. Calder Valley MP Craig Whittaker has been criticised for sharing a joke comparing Labour to Jimmy Savile. Mr Whittaker has been criticised over the joke, suggesting he would rather have Jimmy Savile babysit than have Labour in government. The MP's tweet prompted a huge response on Twitter, with many saying the remarks were ill-judged. The backlash came after the Tory MP's official Twitter account shared a Daily Mail newspaper column criticising Ed Miliband's promises on the economy with the headline, "Trust Labour, I'd rather trust Jimmy Savile to babysit." Mr Whittaker, who has been defending a 6,000 vote majority in Calder Valley at the polls this week, was the chairman of the all-parliamentary group for looked after children and care leavers from 2012 until last month. Mr Whittaker was also Calderdale Council's cabinet member for children and young people from 2007 to 2010 and spent 5 years on the Commons Education Committee. Mr Whittaker is also alleged to have assaulted his own son, Lee Whittaker, 24, who is set to emigrate to Australia in the next few weeks. Police have been investigating an allegation of an attack on the 24-year-old at the Co-op petrol station in Mytholmroyd on Boxing Day night.
However large or small your business, attracting new customers requires dedication and a lot of patience. Just like fishing, but you also need the right gear. Rods,
Reels, lines, hooks, sinkers, lures, tackle box, tackle bag, net, bait, gas gloves, clothes, pocket knife, lunch.
or you could simply advertise with KLTV. Online, grow your business and your clientele. KLTV, your vision made reality. Should have gone to KLTV.
And welcome back. In election news, the Conservatives have won. In the interest of neutrality and not offending anybody, I'll leave it at that. In more local news, a man recently lost part of his ear. I say lost in the same way that many of the most vulnerable people have lost their much-needed benefit payments in the past 5 years, which is to say it was bitten off in the mouth of a rabid idiot who callously spat it into the gutter. It is believed that the altercation in which the man's ear was bitten off took place on King Street at about 9:20 p.m. Since a photo was released onto social media, which has since gone viral and into national newspapers, 2 men from Home Firth have been arrested on suspicion of wounding. The man who lost his ear has since come forward but has not given a statement, yet he has received much needed medical attention for his ear. And finally for this week, the royal baby has arrived. The princess was born last Saturday in the Lindo wing of London's St Mary's Hospital. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have named their daughter Princess Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. Congratulations to both of them. I'm afraid that's all we have time for this week. Once again, if you'd like to contact the Weekly Wind-Up with anything you've heard on today's programme, you can do so by email, info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, or you can find us on Twitter by searching @The Weekly Wind-Up. Thank you for joining us and see you next week.